Johnny Carson had a Rolodex. I didn't know this. And he would make notes of each comic, what he liked about them and what he didn't like about them.
He personally banned me from the show, so
Why?
I would imagine
Why?
my Rolodex because he didn't enjoy me.
The Tonight Show was the crown jewel of American television. One laugh from Johnny Carson could launch a career into superstardom. But on rare occasions, things went so wrong that a guest would be banned for life. That's exactly what happened here. After this unforgettable appearance, he was never allowed back on the Johnny Carson Show, a permanent exile from late-night TV's most powerful stage. What went wrong? Let's take a look. The throne room and the ultimate betrayal. In the glittering world of Hollywood, there are a few thrones that command the kind of power Johnny Carson held. From the moment he strode onto the stage to the sound of Doc Severinson's band, he wasn't just a talk show host, but the undisputed king of late night. For 3 decades, The Tonight Show was more than a television program. It was the cultural hub of America, where new stars were born, established icons cemented their legacy, and a good performance could change the trajectory of a career forever. Getting a seat on that famous couch was the ultimate prize. This was because of what many in the industry called the Carson seal of approval. If Johnny liked you, the audience would like you. Take Jerry Seinfeld, for example. Before his first Tonight Show appearance, he was just another young comic grinding away in clubs. But after Carson gave him a big nod and an even bigger laugh, everything changed. Suddenly, Jerry Seinfeld was a name people knew, and his career was on a rocket ship to superstardom. The same goes for David Letterman, whose sarcastic wit and unique style could have been too weird for mainstream audiences. But Carson championed him, giving him a frequent spot and showing the world that Letterman was a talent to watch. Carson's power wasn't a secret, but it was his greatest tool. He was a master of control, meticulously managing every detail of the show. Every joke in his monologue was chosen with care. He and his team would go over the guest list for weeks, deciding who was worthy of a spot and who wasn't. Nothing on his show was by accident. It was all a carefully constructed kingdom, and Johnny Carson sat on the throne, making every decision. This legendary professionalism was the very thing that made him so respected. But it also created a central tension. Carson's perfect, predictable world would sometimes collide with the unpredictable, often chaotic nature of celebrity egos. For most people, Carson's rules were the golden standard. They knew their place and respected the man who gave them a chance. So what happened when someone decided those rules didn't apply to them? To understand the ultimate betrayal, we must first look at the most famous alleged ban in television history. A story about 2 titans of Hollywood, a playful rivalry that everyone believed was real, but was never quite what it seemed. After the monologue, and before the first guest, Johnny Carson was a king in total control. But that all changed whenever a particular mustached movie star swaggered onto the stage. The relationship between Burt Reynolds and Johnny Carson was a complex mix of genuine friendship and an electric on-screen rivalry. Unlike other guests who navigated the show with caution, Reynolds was a box-office titan with a devil-may-care attitude that perfectly complemented Carson's controlled demeanor. Their bond was real, allowing for a level of playful one-upmanship rarely seen on The Tonight Show. Their appearances became spontaneous comedy sketches, often with an unpredictable edge that kept audiences captivated. It wasn't a real feud. It was a pre-scripted, ongoing comedy bit that audience loved and tuned in for. A running gag that made them feel like they were in on a secret joke. Their on-screen rivalry was a part of the show's lore, fueled by Carson's jokes about Reynolds' love life and his many box-office hits like Smokey and the Bandit and The Cannonball Run. However, even with this unique friendship, there were moments that pushed Carson's limits. The most iconic incident occurred during a 1974 appearance. Reynolds, in a playful jab at Carson's signature look, unexpectedly pulled out a pair of scissors and, without warning, cut the host's tie in half. This act was a direct, although humorous, assault on Carson's professional image. Carson's initial reaction was a mix of shock and a forced laugh. He was visibly surprised and, for a fleeting moment, seemed genuinely irritated. He quickly retaliated by cutting off a piece of Reynolds' shirt collar, and the bit escalated into a whipped cream fight. While the audience loved the playful chaos, reports from behind the scenes suggest Carson was annoyed off-camera. The tie-cutting was a breach of a subtle boundary, as a direct interference with his personal presentation crossed a line. Despite this, the incident did not result in a ban. The bond between the two men was strong enough to absorb even these more aggressive pranks, a testament to a friendship that could withstand almost anything. While many of Johnny Carson's feuds were born from betrayal or professional rivalry, one of his most hostile relationships was with a man who wasn't a rival, but a colleague on the very same network. This was Tom Snyder, a late-night host who, far from earning Carson's respect, was the source of a deeply personal and professional disdain. Their story is a unique one, defined not by a single act or ban, but by a cold, persistent animosity that simmered for years right under the nose of NBC. The root of their conflict was simple and cruel. According to Carson's attorney Henry Bushkin, Johnny found Snyder to be a talentless and boring host. He was genuinely angered that a show he saw as lacking in talent followed his own. This was more than just a professional opinion, but a deep irritation that Carson carried with him. Unlike his other feuds, which often had a public facade of civility, his dislike for Snyder was personal. This tension boiled over into a shocking public incident. In 1979, a drunk Carson spotted Snyder at the Los Angeles restaurant Chasen's. According to Bushkin's memoir, Carson tried to lunge at Snyder in a fit of rage, with his longtime sidekick, Ed McMahon, having to physically restrain him. The restaurant confrontation was a jarring display of a normally composed host losing control and served as a stark example of how much Carson truly disliked Snyder. The conflict was further defined by a profound lack of communication. Despite both men being on NBC's late-night lineup for years, there was no friendly on-air communication. Carson never acknowledged Snyder's show or offered a professional send-off to viewers, a common courtesy between network hosts. Snyder himself later reflected on this bitter experience. After moving to CBS to host The Late Late Show in 1995, Snyder publicly thanked his new boss, David Letterman, for promoting his show, and bitterly remarked that in his 8.5 years at NBC, Carson never once said, "Stay tuned for Tom Snyder." Ultimately, Tom Snyder's story isn't one of a ban for an on-air mistake. Instead, he was the constant, living embodiment of a professional friction that Carson simply couldn't stand. His presence was a source of a deeply personal feud that perfectly illustrates Carson's rigid control over his domain and his ruthless intolerance for anyone he deemed unworthy. While Carson's feud with Tom Snyder was born from professional disdain, it was nothing compared to the kind of unforgivable betrayal that could only come from someone he considered family. To understand the weight of what happened, we have to go back to the beginning. Before she was a comedy icon, Joan Rivers was a rising star in the bustling New York comedy scene. A struggling comic with a big personality and a sharp wit, she finally got her big break in 1965. Her first time on the couch was a memorable one. She was so nervous she barely got a laugh from the audience. But something about her stuck with Johnny. He took a chance on her, and his belief in her changed her life forever. He brought her back again and again. The two of them developed a deep personal relationship built on mutual respect and loyalty. She became his protégé, his first choice to fill in when he was away. As the years went on, Joan Rivers continued to rise, and her relationship with Johnny Carson grew stronger. He saw in her a sharp comedic mind and a tireless work ethic. She became his permanent guest host, a coveted position that made her the heir to the late-night throne in the eyes of many. When Carson was on vacation or had a night off, she was the one who kept the couch warm. She was the queen in waiting, and everyone in the industry, including Joan herself, believed that when Johnny retired, she would be the one to take his place. Their bond was more than professional. It was a close friendship. She considered him her mentor, her champion, and a father figure. He was the one who gave her a shot when no one else would. In the mid-1980s, the television landscape was changing. A new player was entering the game, the Fox network. They were looking for big stars and big shows to challenge the established networks, and they had their sights set on one person, Joan Rivers. They approached her with an offer she could barely believe: her very own late-night talk show. The offer was a dream come true for Joan. It was her chance to finally step out of the shadow of her mentor and become a late-night host in her own right. But there was a catch. She was Carson's heir, and he expected a sign of respect, a sign of loyalty, a simple heads-up before she made a move that could be seen as a challenge to his authority. He expected her to seek his blessing, but she didn't. Advised by her husband, Edgar Rosenberg, she signed the contract with Fox without telling Johnny. She believed that if she told him beforehand, he would try to talk her out of it, or worse, pressure her to stay and lose the opportunity. So she kept it a secret. It was a crucial turning point, a decision that would have devastating consequences. The news broke in the media, and Carson found out the same way everyone else did, by reading it in the newspaper. It was a public and humiliating betrayal. It wasn't just about a rival show. It was a personal affront to his authority and their friendship. He felt blindsided and betrayed. The king of late night had been defied by his heir, and he could not let that stand. The immediate aftermath was swift and brutal. Johnny Carson, a man known for his calm, composed demeanor, was furious. He reportedly never spoke to Joan Rivers again. In a moment that would become a part of late-night lore, he called her on the phone, and in a tense final conversation, he told her she was no longer welcome on. The ban was for life. It was a professional decision that broke a friendship and had a ripple effect that would last for decades. When Carson retired in 1992, his successor, Jay Leno, upheld the ban out of respect for his mentor. For years, Joan Rivers was a ghost in the late-night world. Even after Carson passed away, the ban remained in effect. It wasn't until Jimmy Fallon took over as host that the ban was finally lifted, a testament to the enduring power of Carson's professional decision and the weight of their severed relationship. The story of Joan Rivers is a dramatic saga of betrayal and ambition. It's a tale of a rising star who was so close to the throne that she dared to reach for it herself, only to be cast out forever. It's a reminder of the unwritten rules of Hollywood and the ultimate price of crossing the king. It was a professional decision that broke a friendship and had a ripple effect that would last for decades. Be cast out forever. But for others, the ban was a consequence of a more immediate, on-air transgression. It was about a line that was crossed, a joke that went too far. It was a moment that could have been avoided and a consequence that would last for a lifetime. The crossed line. Unlike the high-stakes personal betrayal of Joan Rivers, the ban of another celebrity was the result of a single, fleeting on-air moment. It was a joke that went too far, a line that was crossed, and the consequences that would last a lifetime. This story belongs to the master of awkward, deadpan comedy, a man whose unique style was either genius or a complete disaster depending on the night. His name was Charles Grodin. Grodin wasn't your typical Tonight Show guest. He was an actor who played a character even when he was just sitting on the couch. His shtick was to be annoyed with Johnny, to act as if he was too important to be there, and to question everything Carson said. He was a challenging guest, but in a way that worked. Johnny, who loved to be in control, enjoyed the unpredictable nature of Grodin's character. He knew it was a performance and would play along, which made for some incredibly funny and unique television. It was a high-wire act where Carson would pretend to be flustered, while Grodin would pretend to be a jerk. They were two masters of their craft, pretending to be people they weren't for the entertainment of millions. This unique dynamic was one of the many reasons Grodin became a popular guest on the show. He was different, and in the well-oiled machine of different was often a good thing. But in 1991, during his final appearance on the show, Grodin's character went a step too far. In a bit that he had planned with Carson's team, Grodin came out and immediately started mocking Carson. He jokingly complained that Johnny hadn't invited him to a private card game, and when Carson denied that he played cards, Grodin pulled out a copy of a book Carson had written, "Happiness is a Dry Martini," and said something about it being a bad book. The audience laughed, but you could see a change in Carson's demeanor. He was visibly annoyed and a little flustered, which was rare for the unflappable king of late night. The insult that crossed the line wasn't just about a card game or a book. It was about Grodin's joke breaking an unspoken rule of the show. The host is always in charge. The joke wasn't just a part of his character. It felt too real, too personal. Grodin poked at Carson's personal life in a way that felt like an attack, not a part of the act. The audience could feel the tension, and it wasn't the good, comedic kind. Carson quickly wrapped up the interview and moved on, but the damage was done. It was clear that Grodin had pushed him too far. The king of late night had been challenged on his own stage, and he was not going to let it go unpunished. The fallout was a classic Johnny Carson move. It wasn't a public ban or a dramatic announcement. It was a professional cold shoulder. Charles Grodin was simply never invited back to. The ban wasn't official or a topic of public discussion, but everyone in Hollywood understood what had happened. Grodin's absence from the guest list spoke volumes. This moment perfectly illustrates Carson's specific sensitivities and his need to maintain total control and command respect in his own domain. He would allow his guests to be funny, to be unpredictable, even to be a little rude, but he would never allow them to genuinely challenge his authority or make the show about them. While Grodin's ban was a result of a fleeting on-air moment, another guest's ban was rooted in a much deeper, more political rivalry that had nothing to do with comedy. It was a behind-the-scenes beef that would end up affecting a completely innocent person. Some comedians learned the hard way that a joke could be too far, a gag too crass, or a stunt too dangerous for Johnny Carson's stage, and 3 different people tested the boundaries and discovered that there were some lines that could never be uncrossed. This is the story of Bobcat Goldthwait, Howie Mandel, and Kathy Griffin. Bobcat Goldthwait was an absolute wild card. His comedic persona was known for being loud, unpredictable, and over the top. He had a unique voice and a chaotic energy that either made you laugh or made you nervous. In 1993, during an appearance on With Jay Leno, Bobcat took his unpredictable act to a shocking and dangerous level. In the middle of his interview, he suddenly grabbed a can of lighter fluid and set the guest chair on fire. The moment was chaos. The flames leaped up as the audience gasped in shock, and Jay Leno, ever the professional, quickly cut to a commercial break. The stunt was a disaster and a huge violation of the show's professional standards. It was a joke gone horribly wrong, and it landed Bobcat in a lot of trouble. He was later arrested and charged with arson, receiving a fine of over $2,000 and a sentence to film public service announcements for fire safety. While this incident happened under Jay Leno's watch, it was a stunt that would have been an absolute non-starter in Carson's era. It was the ultimate lack of control and a direct violation of the show's professional dignity, and it earned him a permanent ban from the show. Howie Mandel's story is a different kind of cautionary tale. As a rising star in the late 1980s and early 1990s, Mandel was a regular guest known for his often offbeat and unpredictable humor. However, his final appearance in 1992 was a significant miscalculation that would cost him his place on Carson's famous couch. Instead of his usual sit-down interview, Mandel decided to bring out a massive, unapproved prop, a saber-toothed tiger statue. The incident was a disaster from the start. The prop, a large, heavy fiberglass creation, was so big it completely blocked the view of the desk and Johnny Carson from the television cameras. This created an instant technical problem and a fundamental breach of Carson's meticulously controlled set. Johnny, who valued a seamless and polished production above all else, was visibly displeased. The conversation was brief and awkward, as Mandel struggled to justify the prehistoric beast, and Carson, stone-faced, looked at the camera with clear frustration. After a few tense moments, Carson cut the segment short, going to a commercial break. The message was clear. You don't bring unapproved chaos into a carefully crafted kingdom. Howie Mandel, who had been a frequent and well-received guest, was never invited on the show again. Mandel has since acknowledged the incident, admitting it was a stupid move and a major career regret. His story remains a stark lesson in the unforgiving rules of late-night television, where a guest's single misstep could lead to a permanent ban. Kathy Griffin, on the other hand, never had a specific incident that led to her ban. Her story is about a comedy style that was fundamentally at odds with the late-night institution. Kathy's brand was built on being bold, loud, and unapologetic. She talks about things most people avoid and has little regard for who might get offended. That attitude did not sit well with the late-night hosts who followed Carson, especially Jay Leno. Kathy's edgy humor was seen as too much for the mainstream audience of The Tonight Show. Over time, she found herself banned from multiple shows, including The Tonight Show. While her ban happened under Jay Leno, it was a reflection of the enduring influence of Carson. Carson's standards of what was considered acceptable on his show were clear, and Kathy's style would have been anathema to them. Her ban wasn't the result of a single moment, but a consequence of her entire act. For most guests, getting banned from was a direct consequence of their own actions. They said something wrong, they betrayed a trust, or they simply crossed a line while on air. But in the ruthless world of Hollywood, sometimes a ban had nothing to do with you at all. This is the story of a completely innocent performer who became collateral damage in a bitter, behind-the-scenes rivalry between two of the biggest names in show business. This is a tale of two feuds, one between Johnny Carson and a Las Vegas showman, and another between that same showman and a beloved female entertainer. The first feud was a long-running, well-known rivalry between Johnny Carson and Wayne Newton. Wayne Newton was the king of Las Vegas. He was a flamboyant singer-performer who commanded his own kind of respect in the entertainment world, a respect that Carson felt was often a little over the top. The exact reasons for their feud were a bit of a mystery, but one of the alleged reasons had to do with a rivalry over a Las Vegas hotel, where Carson had an ownership stake. Newton's popularity allegedly threatened Carson's business interests, which was a big deal since he was very serious about his business ventures. Newton also didn't appreciate Carson's jokes about him, and he wasn't shy about pushing back. This was a cardinal sin in Carson's kingdom. The king of late night did not like to be challenged, especially by someone who wasn't in his inner circle. This professional beef had a victim, Lola Falana. Lola was a vibrant and talented performer, a singer and dancer who was a frequent and beloved guest on the show. She had a unique energy and a charm that worked perfectly with Carson's calm demeanor. Show clips of their interactions reveal a genuine warmth and mutual respect. She was one of the few guests who could sit on the couch and be her own person. She wasn't a comedian who needed a big laugh. She was just a great guest who could tell a great story and entertain the audience. Her appearances were always a highlight of the show, and it seemed like she had a home there for as long as she wanted it. She was in a good place in her career and her life, but Lola Falana also had a close friendship with Wayne Newton. They were colleagues in the Las Vegas world, and they were often seen together. She had no idea that her association with Newton would be a problem. As their friendship grew, the invitations began to dry up. At first, she probably didn't think much of it, but after a while, it became clear. She was no longer being booked on the show. The reason? Her close friendship with Wayne Newton. She was a casualty of the feud between Carson and Newton. She had done nothing wrong on the show, never crossed a line, and never betrayed Carson's trust. She was a great guest who was simply caught in the crossfire of two powerful men. The story of Lola Falana is a sad reminder of the collateral damage of Carson's power. It shows that in show business, sometimes your friends are your enemy's enemies, and you pay the price for it. It was not the only time a guest was caught in the crossfire. A similar story involves a one-time heir apparent who got caught up in a tragic personal drama that would unravel in front of the world. For every guest who was banished from Johnny Carson's kingdom, there was one who was given a key to the throne room and told to cause as much chaos as he wanted. He was the ultimate exception to every single rule. While others walked on eggshells and worried about a misstep, he would stomp on the eggs and get a standing ovation for it. This man was Don Rickles, and his relationship with Johnny Carson was the stuff of legend. Unlike the professional and personal betrayals we've discussed, Rickles' brand of humor was a direct challenge to the late-night format. He was an insult comedian. He didn't tell jokes. He told the truth as he saw it, about anyone and everyone in the room. He would walk onto the set and immediately go for the jugular, insulting Johnny's monologue, his tie, his hair, and even his career. On any other show, a guest who did this would be escorted out by security and blacklisted for life. But on Carson's show, it was an act of affection. So, while others were exiled for a failed joke or an unforgivable betrayal, Don Rickles was the one man who was always welcome. His story is a powerful reminder that Carson, for all his controlling tendencies, was also capable of deep loyalty and a profound appreciation for a friend who could make him laugh. The stories of these bands, whether myth or reality, provide a window into a bygone era of television where the host was king. They reveal the intricate dynamics of power, friendship, and professional etiquette that defined the late-night landscape. But in the end, every monarch must pass on their crown. Johnny's life. After the late night, for 3 decades, Johnny Carson was a nightly ritual for millions of Americans. But on May 22, 1992, that ritual ended. For his final broadcast, he spent the entire show at his desk, reflecting on his time, telling a few final jokes, and playing some favorite clips. He looked directly at the camera, a small, knowing smile on his face, and delivered a simple, heartfelt goodbye, ending with the words, "I bid you a very heartfelt good night." The king of late night had abdicated his throne, and with that, he vanished. His retirement was as carefully managed as his show. Carson disappeared completely from the public eye. He didn't write a memoir, didn't do interviews, and didn't appear on other shows. He moved to Malibu, California, where he spent his days on his yacht and focused on magic tricks and drumming. He was, by all accounts, a profoundly private man, and retirement finally allowed him to embrace that solitude. But his influence never retired. Even from his home, Carson remained the benchmark for all late-night television. He would occasionally call his friend David Letterman to offer a joke or two, showing his continued love for comedy. The shadow of his legacy loomed large over his successors. The final curtain for Johnny Carson came on January 23, 2005. He passed away quietly from emphysema. Just like his final broadcast and his private life, his death was handled with quiet dignity. The man who had been the voice of a nation for 30 years left the world in a way that felt fitting for the private person he truly was. The Carson couch was a stage and a throne. And while many stars found a home there for a few, it was a place of exile. Their stories are a testament to the power of the king of late night and the unforgiving nature of show business. Have you ever seen any of Johnny Carson's shows? And what do you think about how his influence had an impact on people's lives? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, click on the next video on your screen. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.